What's up, everybody? This week on The Nerd Man, I will be talking about Star Wars. Welcome to the Nerd Man podcast vidcast, and as I said, this week I'm going to be talking about Star Wars, and in particular, I'm going to be talking about sort of episodes 1 through 7, the future beyond that, episodes 8, 9, and even the Star Wars story movies like Rogue One coming out. I'm just going to tell you about my thoughts on the franchise, just sort of my history with Star Wars. So to kick it off, that's where I'm going to start. My history with Star Wars and growing up with it. I was born after the first Star Wars came out. And I think I was born basically right around the time the second one came out in 1980. And basically what I'm getting at is I was a baby when Star Wars actually came out. But I did grow up with the original trilogy. It was, I'm not even sure how old it was when I first saw it, but I do remember, I believe I almost want to say I saw it out of order even. I feel like I may have watched Empire Strikes Back first or something and then watched back. I mean, I was a kid. I just thought they were really cool movies, and as I got older, I got more into them, rewatched them, purchased them several times over the years. So I really liked them. I loved it. I loved the science fiction stuff, the space sort of drama. I know a lot of people refer to it as a space opera, sort of. So I I really liked them. I mean, I liked the characters. I especially liked the lightsaber stuff. I thought that was the coolest thing. Lightsabers and Jedis and everything. I know a lot of people liked, Darth Vader. A lot of people like the Sith and, Boba Fett and stuff and everything. I always liked the Jedis. I liked Luke Skywalker. He was my favorite character. I wasn't like a Han Solo person. I was, Luke Skywalker and Yoda. I mean, Yoda was always probably my top favorite, and he didn't even really do anything. I guess I liked the little character of him. But more on Yoda as we go through this podcast. So basically, I guess in general, that is my history with Star Wars, where it began, how I grew up with it in my early years. I'm sure I saw the movies somewhere probably around the time when I was 10 or so. I'm just kind of guessing, preteen, and probably really got more into it in my teen years. And I guess, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the original trilogy, because out of the original trilogy, over time, I really liked Return of the Jedi, which I know a lot of people, their favorite is Empire Strikes Back. A lot of people like Boba Fett and everything. I see the reasons why people like Empire, but I never liked Boba Fett. In fact, I always thought Boba Fett was incredibly lame. I mean, there's going to be spoiler alerts, so if you have never seen Star Wars, I'm not even sure why you're watching this or listening to it, but just be prepared. There's going to be spoilers throughout, and I'm not going to censor it anymore beyond this point. So, I mean, Boba Fett dies like a chump, basically. I mean, I don't ever get why everybody thinks he's so cool. I know a lot of people liked his ship and stuff, Slave One, but it's an okay ship. It's unique and whatever, but I just thought, this is a guy. He's just not equipped to face off against these heroes. I mean, he's a bounty hunter, and he didn't even catch Han Solo. Darth Vader did. Darth Vader set a trap, caught him, and just gave him to Boba Fett. So, Boba Fett didn't even do his job, and then he just gets killed super easy because just like his father before him, he tried facing off against Jedis and things and couldn't stand up to it. But besides the point, I'll probably be talking about that maybe more later. But what I really like, and I guess a lot of times with any sort of trilogies and things, I oftentimes don't like the middle one because I like things to end and stuff, which if you listen to my previous week with movies versus TV, I like the endings, not so much the journeys and stuff. So that's probably also why I like Return of the Jedi. And even A New Hope is pretty decent too because it's sort of a contained story. It sort of ends. I know that, I don't think they knew 100% sure they were going to make more beyond that originally. But Return of the Jedi I just like because especially, if you go back and actually watch A New Hope, the lightsaber battle, which there's really only like one, and that's between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, is just awful. It's wretched to even go back and watch it. It's like cringingly bad. But, I guess, at the time, it was amazing and mind-blowing to see two people face off with these swords that were glowing and everything. But they got a little bit better in Empire Strikes Back, but they were the best at the time with Return of the Jedi and, Luke and Vader fighting and everything. Things just got better choreographed and stuff like that. I just liked, at that point you've been with the characters for a bit, you know them more, and it's just, I really liked it. I just liked how everything sort of wrapped up, and that probably was my favorite of the original trilogy. But, so, moving on, in my late teens, we began to hear about Star Wars coming back with the prequels, Episode 1. The story that leads up to Episode 4. And I was super hyped. By the time in 1999, when Phantom Menace came out, I was 19 or around there, 18, 19. And I can just remember the hype leading up to it. Despite what you may or may not think about it these days, the hype was insane. The hype was big for Force Awakens as well, but I don't know. I feel like the hype was insane. There was a bigger gap of time between the release of Episode 3 and Episode 1. I think it was something like 16 years or something like that versus the time span between The Force Awakens and then the last Episode 3. So, people were just starving for more Star Wars, essentially. The idea that they were making more, and I remember when that first trailer released, when you saw the first trailer for it, that Lucasfilm and everything in the Star Wars and everything, it started with just this like eerie setting, misty, and some people, I think it was like, I don't know, Gungans or something, I can't remember, coming through. It was just like, I was just awestruck by it. First of all, it looked amazing compared to the previous ones, which people will debate that as well. At the time, though, we're talking at the time, the CGI looked amazing. It maybe hasn't held up as well over time, but at the time, it was amazing, and I was so pumped for it. So, I stood in line for a long time to, I'm not like a super Psycho fan, but I stood in line for a few hours to see it on opening night at the midnight showing, and I subsequently went back, I believe, I believe I saw it 3 or 4 times in the theater. I mean, people complained about Jar Jar Binks a lot at that time, and he was annoying and this and that. But overall, I mean, people have forgotten, but overall, everybody loved it. I mean, it was just being talked about, and people just loved it. It wasn't until later people began to start kind of hating on it and analyzing it more and whatever and coming up with their own ideas about it. But the prequels, I loved them. I mean, like I said, I saw that one about 3 or 4 times, The Phantom Menace, and then Clone Wars or Attack of the Clones came out, and that one just floored me at the time. I mean, there were so many moments. In fact, I recently just rewatched it, which again I'll get to a little bit later here in this podcast. I recently rewatched the whole thing with my kids, and I was still giddy, and I can remember the giddiness I had over seeing Yoda. Again, like I said, Yoda was always one of my favorite, if not favorite, Star Wars characters, and I remember seeing when Yoda fought Count Dooku, when he came in that scene, he walks in with his cane and he fights, drops it and pulls out that lightsaber. I just about lost it. I just about peed my pants. I mean, it was like childhood, just giddiness, like super excited. I mean, I went to that a couple times in the theater. I mean, I don't usually go to movies a ton in the theaters, but yeah, I mean, I loved it. I liked that Anakin was older. As time went on, I really did not like young Annie. Um, I didn't mind Jar Jar so much, but it was young Anakin in Phantom Menace that is the most cringeworthy performance to me. But I didn't mind, Hayden Christensen. I kind of liked him. He grew on me, and some of the performances can be a little bit wooden and stiff, but overall, I liked it. Ewan McGregor was great as Obi-Wan. So Attack of the Clones came out, and I really loved it. I mean, it was great. And then Revenge of the Sith came out, and when I watched it at the time, it was rivaling to be my favorite Star Wars movie. I mean, it was incredible, the emotions in it and everything, especially as it kind of wrapped up in the battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin was just intense and epic, and I loved it. So overall, I really like the prequels. I know they get a lot of hate, but I really liked them. And there are stuff about them I don't like, but there's stuff about the original trilogy I don't like. So I guess that's going to kind of segue me into talking about sort of my slow progression over time into actually, I think, preferring the prequels over the original trilogy. Because what I really liked about the prequels is that they added so much more lore into the world of Star Wars, into the universe of Star Wars. There was more planets and just more stuff. Because, I mean, really when you break it down, the original trilogies have sort of the same story in a sense, as far as A New Hope is really a lot like Return of the Jedi and everything. They're sort of similar, destroying a Death Star and everything. We did get planets and things, but I guess we just got so much more with the prequels, just the politics. And I know a lot of people don't like the politics stuff, and it's not like it's like the greatest parts of the movies or anything, but it's just more. It's more added to the world, and I love it. And the idea of what goes on some of these other planets. I loved the whole like kind of core planet stuff of the, where all the politics sort of happen, the big city, Coruscant and everything, and all these sort of Republic planets that we didn't see before. Most of what we saw in the original trilogy was sort of planets and worlds off the beaten path, where the rebels are hiding and stuff and getting away from the Empire and everything. So we didn't get to really see what the rest of the universe was like. And much like Firefly, another great sci-fi space series, drama, whatever you want to call it, they have these core planets in the outer rim and everything, and it's much like Star Wars, and it takes a lot from Star Wars, but that's what you have. You have these like core inner planets and stuff with like the politics and where everything's happening. The rich people, they're just like the richer planets, the main city, and everything. And then you have that outward planets where a little bit more lawlessness and stuff, and a little bit more of what you want to do and different things, which is like Tatooine and everything. And that was a lot in the original trilogy. So I liked sort of the contrast of it, and it had a little bit of the other outer planets as well in the prequels. But I like that there was just more. It just showed you so much more of what was there. And then not to mention Jedis. I said before I love lightsabers and Jedis and everything. I loved the prequels for that. There was so much lightsaber battles, Jedis at the top of their game, sort of thing. I know people complain about sort of choreographed type battles. Don't care. I loved it. I love the choreographed battles, how it looks more like a dance, and it doesn't always look like a dance, but it's just, I don't know. I love the flashy sort of fighting like that in choreographed fighting, cool moves and things. Darth Maul is probably one of my other top favorite characters and everything, and really the best part in some ways about episode 1. But episode 2 and 3 I really liked a lot. And there's cheesy dialogue, there's wooden acting, stiff acting and stuff, and some of the dialogue isn't the greatest, but honestly, go back and watch the original trilogy and you'll find that sort of stuff is in there as well. I mean, as much as I love Mark Hamill these days, and the fact that he does some cool stuff, he's gonna, in the new movies and the voice of Joker, basically. I mean, he was super cheesy in those movies, like super cheesy. There's campiness in all of them, cheesiness in all of them. They all have their pluses and minuses. So I don't get the hate on the prequels. George Lucas didn't ruin the franchise. I mean, he added to his world. It was his world to begin with. That's what bugs me about people. They act as if they're entitled to George Lucas's world. He created this whole fantasy thing of Star Wars and everything. I mean, if you created something, wouldn't you be sort of upset if people were just bugging you about it all the time and telling you how it should be and this and that and what you did wrong and everything? It's your creation. I mean, you can take tips and pointers and listen to people's feedback and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's still your creation. If you want to come up with something to make your own world, go make your own world. Do that thing. Step out into your creativity and make that. Don't just harp on somebody else's creativity, because I respect George Lucas. He did it. He made that stuff. He made this world happen, and I'm a little sad that it was sort of taken from him. He got kind of weighed down by the negative hate from the fans on the prequels and everything. I mean, I think a lot of fans don't sit back and watch them and just enjoy them. It's Star Wars. It's more Star Wars. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess I can look past certain things. I can enjoy a movie. I can just sit and enjoy a movie for what it is. Excuse me. But the prequels, they just had something that I really liked. And what also helped me in segueing into my sort of next topic I wanted to discuss within this is sort of one of the reasons why I like the prequels and what has sort of brought me into enjoying them more now than the original trilogies. I recently watched them with my daughters and my wife, who really hadn't sat down and watched all the Star Wars movies. And I wanted to have them watch them in chronological order. Some people would say watch the original trilogy first and then go back and watch them in the order they were released. But I thought I saw them in the order they were released. My kids have the chance to see them in chronological order, which I couldn't do. So I thought, some people say it ruins the surprises, but it puts just a different perspective on it, really. I mean, yes, you know that Vader is Luke's father and stuff and whatever, but you can see that. You have that information. Before, it was sort of a surprise, but now you have it. And so you know everything leading up to it is just sort of like you have this extra piece of information that the characters don't have, and it's just a different depth. It's a different way to see the movies. And my kids are young, and they might not even get that, really. But I saw it with my daughters. And upon watching it, and I know some people will disagree with me on this, but Padme especially stood out as a very strong female character. I really liked her. My kids liked her. She was a very strong female character and somebody that I think, my daughters could look up to and see, could kind of hold her own with the guys and stuff. She wasn't the damsel in distress and whatever. I mean, the arena scene in particular, I like because, she's the heroes or the Jedis or whatever are sitting there trying to figure out how to get out of the situation. She's already working on getting out of it. She's the first one to kind of free herself and things and get out of her situation. She's just sort of hands-on with stuff. Now, some people would argue Leia's a great female character, but I didn't really see it that way, nor did my wife. My wife really didn't like Leia. In fact, thought she was very damsel in distress type woman, and in the way it was in the movies, it kind of is. She is kind of. I mean, if you watch back through it again and you kind of notice the differences, you will notice that Leia is sort of that damsel in distress type. She does a few things. She shoots a blaster here or there. She does stuff, but I don't know, overall, her character, and it could have just been at the time, when they didn't have maybe as many strong female characters at the time those movies were released and everything. But just, I could definitely tell my kids and stuff, they all liked the prequels, I think, better than the original trilogy. So it was definitely different to see it from that perspective through their eyes and different things. And just, I mean, again, because of the lightsaber battles and everything, it was just, I really liked it. But this is getting a little long, so I'm going to try to kind of rush through and keep this under 30 minutes if I can. So now I want to touch on The Force Awakens, because The Force Awakens came out. There was so much hype. George Lucas left, and now we have J.J. Abrams coming in to direct this thing and sort of write it and relaunch this and everything. I was definitely very hyped. I was definitely hyped to see it, but I was saddened because I really think the creation should have stuck with George Lucas. I think he was the one that created it. It should be his, but if he chose to leave, so be it. That was his decision. And I was going into it with very kind of open to see what would happen with it. So I saw it. And within the first 10 minutes of the movie, I was like, this is exactly how A New Hope starts. And as the movie progressed on, it was like, this is exactly A New Hope. And you can argue and say all sorts of different things, but I really don't care because it is exactly like A New Hope. The plot line is the same exact thing. It starts the same way, a droid being integral to the plot and having a message, and the Death Star and everything. We need to destroy the Death Star. It even had a trench run in it and everything. I mean, the entire movie's plot line is the exact same thing as A New Hope. And I know people say, well, it's a nostalgia sort of thing. It needs to be rebooted and bring in a new generation and whatever. I strongly disagree. Most people will have already seen Star Wars. If they haven't, their parents or somebody else will introduce it to them. They needed an original story. They needed new lore and new things, and which is what Lucas did with the prequels, and I wanted more of that. Now, that being said, I think the story is awful. But the characters are some of the best. In particular, Rey. All that I said about Padme being the best, Rey kind of now moves up that and takes place of, I think she's the strongest female character in the series. I love her. She's amazing. Finn was great. Kylo Ren is pretty good. They all have interesting sort of character to them, but it's completely lost on the story, in my opinion. The story doesn't give them strong moments to shine with their characters because it's just such a rehash and heavily focused on action, which I love. I love the action, but there's more time spent on nostalgia and saying, hey, remember when this happened, sort of thing, or remember these characters and this and that. I think the story is lost on nostalgia, and I'm optimistic because I'm hoping in episode 8 they can get that nostalgia thing out of their system and move on to an actual story with these new characters that I do love. But because of that, I'm disappointed in the franchise. I'm optimistic about the future and where it could go as long as they steer clear of nostalgia and actually tell a real original story. But, overall, The Force Awakens is definitely low on my list of Star Wars movies. It's not my favorite. It's a notch above The Phantom Menace, probably. The Phantom Menace is my least favorite. I still like to watch it. I'll still watch it to this day. I mean, there's good moments about it. Darth Maul is amazing. I love his character, and, there's definitely cool moments in the movie. But it's definitely my least favorite Star Wars movie, with The Force Awakens probably being right there near it, with its saving grace being the awesome characters. But the story was just such a rehash and a disappointment to me. So, that being said, I guess I want to wrap up with I'm optimistic about the future of the series. I definitely am going to see all the movies coming out and the new Star Wars, story movies. Rogue One actually looks really amazing to me, and I look forward to seeing it this year. In fact, I'm looking forward to probably being more favorite than Force Awakens. I'm pretty excited about that one, the characters in it and everything. So, I guess I'm going to wrap it up here. You can let me know if you agree with anything I've been saying, my opinions and thoughts on the Star Wars franchise, or if you just blatantly disagree. I mean, trust me, I've had these debates. A lot of people don't agree with me. They don't see eye to eye with me, and that's fine. We all think different things, but I think ultimately in the end, I would just like people to take a step back. Try not to hate on these things as much, enjoy them for what they are. Even as much as I may not like something or say I don't like it, it's still Star Wars, and I'll still watch it because it's entertaining and it's fun, and it's part of the universe that I like in this sort of science fiction stuff. So I guess this is me signing out. If you're watching on YouTube, keep YouTubing it up. If you're listening on a podcast, then I don't know how to end with a podcast. So take care of yourself and let me know what you think. If you get a moment, leave it in the comments and subscribe, and look forward to my next week. Talk to you later.